What's up to all our sidekicks and henchfolk out there in the Geek Nation? Yes, I am recording on Audacity. Brian, thank you for reminding me. Welcome this morning to the CultPop podcast live stream, aka spoiler alert, episode 740. 740.
Wow.
Right?
With no renumberings, right? No volume
No
2.
renumberings. There's been multiple reboots, but there's been no renumbering. So that's still original legacy numbering. Issue number 740, where we talk about this past week's comics, review them, as well as other pop culture tidbits and stuff. You could see we're a little light on staff today, but we might be getting guests and jumping in and stuff. We're here for you.
Yeah.
I'm your ad hoc
one of
host.
our co-hosts.
Yeah. I'm your ad hoc host, Noel, loyal customer and part-time employee of Johnny Destructor's Hero Complex, located on 4327 Main Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, located in the neighborhood of Manayunk. JD's on a little family vacation, but rest assured most of the gang's all here. Starting with the person to my left. My right? It's your right, my left, my stage left.
It's your stage left as perceived by the audience.
Yeah, my stage left is perceived by those that are watching this through the mirror of a screen.
When I look this way.
I'm
looking at you.
Brian, I wrote a little voice thing down here for you. So also joining us this morning is a guy who requires little introduction.
Oh,
but
and yet
we'll
we've done
receive
so
one.
much already.
Let me finish.
Oh, I always forget that there's something planned.
Yeah.
Even though you preambled it with such. Please, go on. No, I want to hear it.
No, it's going to save it for next week. I'm going to save it for next week.
Ooh,
Brian, I have a question from the audience to you. What's your favorite color?
I don't know. I guess blue is what pops into my head, right? I'm a big teal guy, like a dark teal. Favorite color? I love color. You know what I mean? I love just colors in general. And the ones in the blue areas tend to please me the most. I
asked these questions, some rudimentary, some like larger, to try and get you to commit to something.
Oh,
and
really?
Every single week. No, you commit to the enormity or the massiveness. You never actually give something. So every single week, I'm just going to keep trying to ask you a question. It's going to get really stupid. Eventually, it's going to be like, do you like getting shot in the face?
No. I've never been shot in the face, right? I don't know. But I assume that I would.
It's like, would you like to be in what's better, to be in a coma or not be in a coma? I'm not sure what it's like to be in a coma, so I'm unable to answer that question.
That's an even bigger question, right?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I hate it, and I hate.
If you're on like a mystical journey, see, I see it like a constellation, right? It's like a constellation of things. This world, and we don't need to.
This is already off the rails because
there's no rails. It's constellation.
Yeah. So both of the fathers on the show are either having technical difficulties or are off this week. So we just want to say Happy Father's Day to all the people listening, as well as our
fathers,
friends and
specifically.
Co-hosts.
Andy Lieb, my dad. Happy Father's Day.
Nino Bartocci, have a good one. I know you will never see this.
Yeah.
But I tell other people Happy Father's Day for you. Before we get into a letter, because we actually have a letter today.
We have a letter?
We do. We have a letter. I want to thank everybody for joining us live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. If you're here joining us, I appreciate it. Please jump into the chat, comment, let us know how we're doing. No, you know what? Don't let us know how we're doing. Just join the conversation.
Let us know how you're doing.
If
it's related to reading comics.
Or just how you feel.
Just whatever. That's cool.
It's tough all around.
As long as it's a genuine comment, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. But other than that, comments, questions, concerns, if you're watching from one of those platforms, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you know when we go live, as well as post new content, which we're going to start doing soon. We took a little bit of a hiatus because all of us were moving, we were sick, we were all kinds of things. Now we're back settled.
A lot of people that moved just recently.
Yeah, it's kind of in the air, right?
Yeah. And what's your favorite color, Noel?
Blue, green. Blue, green.
Well. Blue, like a blue green.
I'm not the one that wants to have a philosophical conversation off a binary question. So I'm not the one on trial here.
All right. No,
anyway.
I'll commit to that. I do want that.
Okay.
What's up first?
We've got
the letter.
Yeah. We've got a letter sent to us by Steve Britt. And by the way, these don't have to just be letters. Sometimes, like some of these come through on our Facebook Messenger or email. So just comment or message to us whenever you want, even in the comments down below of this video. If you have a question or something you want us to talk about, put it in there and we'll respond. So this comes from Steve Britt. There's 2 parts to it. I'm gonna read the first one and then get your feedback. So DC's big 3, in my opinion, and I'm sure others, has already been Bruce, Clark, and Diana, which makes sense as to why they were in the Justice League movie. My question, who would you pick as Marvel's big 3 had they all the rights at the time before starting the MCU? So the question, like before I get to his answer, I want to get yours. The question being, who are the equivalent cinematically of Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman in the Marvel universe?
So here's the thing. I also have read his email, and I agree with a bunch of what he said. So I don't want to just say it now, and then you read his thing, and it's
that's fine. Yeah, I don't know if you had anything extra you wanted to add, even if it's just like a tweak of what his answer was.
So I don't remember word for word. I remember he mentions Wolverine and Spider-Man as being their big 2, right? And if we are talking about popularity and business-wise marketability, that kind of thing, definitely. I think those are their big 2, right? Yeah. I don't know that there is a third. We're talking pre-MCU. Iron Man and Captain America were barely known,
Yeah, like Iron Man was. Well, I mean, Captain America was probably much more well-known than Iron Man.
True. But not particularly appreciated outside of comic circles, that kind of thing.
No.
So, I mean, Wonder Woman is a fairly distant third to Superman and Batman as far as just like general knownness. Maybe not that distant, but
Oh, she had a TV show, but so did The Flash. But hers was like a legacy TV show. So,
and she was on the cover of what was the first? Was it like Ms. Magazine? And what makes this kind of difficult to question is it's hard to know what informed what, whether popularity informed what was actually, the popularity in popular culture versus the popularity in comics and what was selling versus what was just visually better. So like Wonder Woman had a show and a lot of people remember the Linda Carter show, but was that, other than that slice of time, was that the most popular, and is it the most popular third book? Right? And I think she definitely has been, like, she's, if we want to gauge it also by who is known outside of people who know comics.
It's your parameters. So I think that's what I'm trying to say is I think that's why Wonder Woman becomes the other, like the other 3, because it wasn't her comic that made her more popular than anything else. It was the fact that she was used in popular culture. Same with Batman and Superman. Well, I mean, Superman I think is publishing beyond, and then.
Well, that's what I think. I think Batman and Superman are both like these like juggernauts of like knownness and popularity. And some of that also is probably perception, right? There is the unfortunate perception amongst toy manufacturers and whatever that things like this marketed to girls won't sell. We know that that's why Young Justice was canceled, because it wasn't selling enough toys to girls. And it could be that Wonder Woman has just as much of an audience as Superman and Batman, and could be the like who you would make a movie out of. It definitely is the third one. It might be just much closer than we think. But as far as Marvel goes, did Marvel have anyone remotely in that realm? Maybe the Hulk, and they did make a movie of the Hulk at that time.
So part of my answer was potentially, what about the Fantastic Four?
Personally, for my personal pantheon, yes.
So Steve Britt had mentioned his choices were Spider-Man, Cap, and Logan, not just the X-Men, but specifically Logan. And then he kind of created a scenario from the MCU blueprint. So like it would start off with just a Spider-Man movie, hint at an extra world. Essentially, it sounds like he's replacing Spider-Man for Iron Man, how they kind of just kicked it off. It's just a singular and then, big.
Which they probably would have done if they had the rights to Spider-Man at the time.
Followed by Cap, and then in Cap's movie, his buddy at a campfire in the war. He doesn't like Cap doesn't have a knife to open the rations, and his buddy goes, "Here, I've got 6," and sneak end credits. X-Men's the third movie, so you tease it in the one to the other. I don't know if I love that scenario. Either way, I get like what he was doing, right?
Yeah,
of
for
like
sure.
breadcrumbs, right?
Yeah.
So that was his answer, and I agree with Spider-Man. But I think I would go. Yeah, I think I would go Spider-Man, FF, X-Men. Maybe not in that order, but because when I think of eras of Marvel, I think of the Spidey, which is just the single vigilante with real life problems, and that's kind of the theme of 75% of Marvel comics, right? And he was the first one. And then I think of the First Family, and then I think of
who also have their normal family problems.
This what I mean. Like, so you've got the he's not orphaned, but you've got the kid making right, you've got the family dysfunction, and then you've got the societal or cultural analogy, which is the X-Men. And those are almost like the three pillars of themes in Marvel comics, right?
Yeah.
It's either interpersonal dysfunction, pulling yourself up from your bootstraps because you've got nothing, or it's cultural representation via the X-Men.
I've got another pillar of Marvel comics that the Hulk embodies, but so does the Thing. But the Thing also embodies. The powers are vast, but you'd rather not have them. You know what I mean? There's always like Marvel loves that like power with some kind of drawback kind of thing.
I think that's also too. I think that's also part of the Spider-Man of it all too. The burden of responsibility, the burden of power.
Oh,
it's
true.
never.
But like the Thing
never
is like,
a. Well, yeah, he can't switch off.
Yeah,
it's never. It's a gift, but it's not without consequence. Almost across the board.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, I'm not saying Superman's a bad character, but it's just
DC
power.
doesn't do that at all. You know, DC is not at all, but I mean, very rarely. That's not DC's thing. DC's thing is like power archetypes.
It's the benevolence of gods.
Yeah. That's why I like DC more.
Relatively impenetrable if you want a grounded perspective. Like they do insert it in places, but you're never going to really relate to Batman or really relate to Superman. Just in like instances like, oh, I've had trouble talking to a girl once, but you're still never going to have a shared experience with these characters.
I suppose so. And I guess that is a bonus, but you know, they speak of ideals, you know what I mean? And
no. So the DC is ideals living up to it for the most part,
and discussion about what those are.
Yeah,
you know, that kind of thing.
Marvel is constantly striving to meet an ideal.
Yeah, like struggling through normal life too.
So the DC pantheon is already there, and they're just trying to wrestle with maintaining order,
like examples, you know. Yeah. Anyway. And obviously both of them have both, you know.
Little pieces here and there, but Marvel not so much.
Actually, I was like, well, Captain America, but he got trapped in the ice. Silver Surfer, but his whole thing is pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean, there's cosmic powers, but there's no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because he's very noble too. You know what I mean? And Cap is like spot on morally within the confines of his universe. You know. But he also has a drawback. He didn't originally. It was just solid bonuses, you know. But then he got trapped in the ice for however many years it's been.
Either way, Steve, thank you. It was a solid question. Yeah. Obviously, we're both like it. Like everything, it turns into a larger debate about like the nature of storytelling within the two within the two universes. But whatever.
That's why we like it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the books.
Let's do it.
Let's get to the first one this week, which is One of Enormity. Planet-sized Enormity.
Whoa.
Planet-sized X-Men #1 by Marvel Comics, written by Jerry Duggan, with art by the incomparable Pepe Larraz. Diamond has this to say. Sorry, I should say Solicits have this to say because there's more distributors than Diamond now. So solicitations read as follows. They came to slay. The Hellfire Gala rages on, but bigger things are afoot a world away. Make no mistake, this is absolutely the most important issue of the month. That's it. So,
of X-Men or just anything?
I mean, if we're just believing solicitations, this is the most important issue of anything, any publication.
Or synonyms like problems that you may have. This is more important than your issues.
Likely.
This month.
Yeah. This is more important than therapy. This is more important than, you know what? We're going to stretch that metaphor too much already. So, Planet-Size X-Men. I am only reading, do you currently read anything X in issues?
I was really enjoying a lot of it
right?
when we did our thing. Yeah. The what was it, 10 of Swords thing?
Yeah.
Oh, that I was off the whole line after that, and I liked it, but I never went back to the ones that I really did like.
Yeah, so it's starting to feel a little bit too massive. So I've like at issue 6 of almost everything, I just dropped off all of them except the ones that I want to dip in on. But I kept X-Men, which is just the Jonathan Hickman book, and I would read when it came to the crossovers. I would only read the X-Men book and the one-shots. So like I think in X of Swords they had like 3 was like the kickoff, a midpoint, and then the finale was its own extra one-shot that wasn't in a so I literally read just like the highlight reel and the X-Men book, and it was fine.
Yeah.
But this is something like that. The Hellfire Gala is going on, which is it's taking place in every single X book. From what I understand, it's not really. So it really is just like one night, and these are all the books version of this night. Whereas, so it's like 12 of them. But
so it's not a continuing story so much as like
it's
different
more
perspectives.
It's more of a Rashomon kind of thing.
Yeah,
so it's really just like 4 or 5 books that have a thread line that take you through the night, but all 12 of them give you just kind of more of a holistic view. So you don't have to read them all. I think even in the indicia of each X-Men book, you know, they've got the books coming out soon in the back, you know, like X-Men and X-Force, like number whatever, and then dates.
Yeah.
Some of them are red and some of them are black. The red ones are kind of like the main plot.
Gotcha.
So
what is there's a gala and they all have new costumes, or not costumes, but evening wear.
It's like the Met Gala / an ambassador dinner.
Like
so what they did was for the first time they invited humans of note onto Krakoa as well as all mutants, and it was like a big old gala come with an announcement, a quinceañera, a debutante kind of ball of we are now members of this world. So that's been happening, and in the last issue of X-Men number 21, which is Hickman's final issue, it was literally just leading up to a speech that's Emma was going to give at midnight. And that issue ended with her about to give her speech. It was so incredibly weird. Some people were like leaving, some people were moving. There was a lot of like textless panels of mutants looking at each other being like, you ready? Let's go. All right. Like they're preparing for something and then they give you nothing.
Was it these mutants? Did it turn out to be the ones that are featured in this?
What it turned out to be was what precipitated in this issue, which was essentially like, I think it's out there. Like I read this not knowing anything about what was going to happen. If anything, I was more piqued because I was like, what the fuck are they going to do? Like, are the mutants just going to kill everyone on the island right now? Like it was so like they really did a good job of like driving the tension up to whatever this was going to be. And I should have seen this coming.
I don't know. You mean because of the title?
Because of the title, because of like, oh yeah, I got it. Like it just makes sense on so many levels. However, I still was like, oh shit, okay. And this was also one of those instances where like they're saying left and right, this is the most important thing. This is going to change continuity. This is a huge shift, and it's always just like roll my eyes. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Wait,
this actually is a giant shift in continuity.
Yeah,
this is a big deal.
Yeah, and well, before we get into the thing itself, you say. The lead-in issue that you thought ended really weirdly was Hickman's final issue.
Yeah.
And then he didn't write this?
No.
That's weird.
Well, he's like the big old showrunner for everything.
Right. Sure.
So it wasn't like a cold handoff. It was like, so Jerry Duggan is going to take over the X-Men book. With the new number 1.
Okay.
So this is almost like the in-between issue that closes that and starts this.
And
so
Hickman's
Jerry
doing a
Duggan
different
wrote
X book, right?
Yeah. He's doing Inferno, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
So Planet Size X-Men. Essentially, like the elevator pitch, the X-Men terraform Mars for all of the inhabitants of Arakko. So they have claimed a second planet in our solar system.
Oh, yeah. There's a little bit about that too that I think we should.
The interstitial in the back. The notes from NASA. They're like fascinating. It appears to be true. We don't know. Personal note. We're a little bummed, and we really would like to visit for scientific purposes. Like I thought that was so awesome that NASA was just like, this is awesome, but it's also kind of sad because we want to touch Mars too. Yeah, because it's a sovereign nation now. It belongs to.
Right.
So the end
I thought it was going to be that the Krakoa was, I thought this was where the mutants were moving. And I don't know too much about these other folks.
The Iraqi?
Yeah. I know a little bit about it. I see Todd Engel has already developed some feelings about the Arakko,
Todd Engel says, this is another book with Hickman doing his grandiose thing, and once he leaves, it all goes away. I can't see Mars populated by a bunch of boring mutants lasting long. It's going to be like Genosha. Everyone's going to forget about it, yet they're going to be up there for decades. Yeah. Like, nobody was doing anything with Genosha for like 15 years before Grant Morrison nuked it.
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking when reading this. I was like, oh, I wonder how long this will be the case.
Yeah.
And it'll be for a while until they feel like doing something else with Mars. But, who knows?
So at the end of Ten of Swords, when the inhabitants of Krakoa won, the two islands merged. They became one. But all of the people in other worlds that are associated with Arakko are now inhabitants of the Krakoa Iraqi thing. So early in this issue, and also too, according to this, that only happened 2 weeks ago. But in this issue, Captain America brings it up to Scott. He's like, "Hey, dude, I'm not here to harsh your vibe. I just want you to know the government let me know that they've noticed your landmass has increased by 500%. Don't know why. Kind of creepy. And there's like 5 billion more people. So not saying we're going to do anything about it, but scaring the shit out of a lot of people." And he's like, "Hey, don't worry about it." So what they essentially did is they terraformed Mars for that all of those excess people
too. Like, yeah, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what they were doing. And it starts out with like Magneto riding these asteroids, getting iron, and they're like using the various mutant abilities to do what they need to do, including, I think Hope is able to magnify. I think Hope is able to magnify other mutants' powers, so that's part of it. And that whole mutant technology thing that Hickman's been doing, and I love that idea of, I get why these superpowers don't radically change the world of Marvel Comics, because it has to kind of be sort of close to ours. But if that really existed, like, you could have people whose jobs it was to grow plants in areas, all that kind of stuff.
And I can't believe, if it has happened before, it's nothing that's happened in my lifetime and or that I remember reading. But the very simple idea of using mutants' abilities to enhance or change another mutant's abilities for a separate result is something that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, that is cool.
So the idea of you've got one mutant that could do one thing. Well, yeah, but you could supercharge it and make it something else by adding this other mutant. So it's essentially just like chemistry with mutants. Yeah. And through that chemistry with mutants, they were able to like, oh yeah, we can actually terraform a planet. So we've got this guy who's able to create oceans. We've got this person who creates weather. We've got this person who's got extra biomes in their system. We've got this person, and they just like all work together to terraform a planet. It's insane. So the book reads, the art is spectacular. the pacing is really fascinating because the book reads as like a how-to science project, but it's done so well. So like it jumps back and forward in time. So you've got the current events, which is the process of terraforming the planet, but then they keep kind of switching back to a couple weeks ago, a couple days ago, where Magneto was putting his plan in place by getting all of like the mutant that could do this, the mutant that can do that. So he's like the architect of building a planet for
which is
all
just
of
the kind of thing that Magneto would do, right? Like he thinks about mutant kind as like moving into the future and what can it be. So it makes sense that it would be him. Yeah.
This is really, really cool. So I don't know. On one hand, this is a really, really good kind of end cap to this phase of the X-Men books because it's taking all of these extra characters and putting them in another planet. It's almost just like taking them off the board in an interesting way. But I'm not sure what the status quo is going to actually be now. Are we going to get separate stories on Iraqi? Are we going to get like,
well, there is that other element, right? That they brought in the whole like diplomatic thing.
Well, that's
are they like planning on doing something with that?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Anybody in the chat that knows this for sure, because I read it only once a while ago. The population of Iraqi, all of those people, they're a constantly warring culture. So those like Game of Thrones style, those houses are all factions of warriors that are constantly in war. And when the mutants of Krakoa won, they essentially forced a peace, or like you ain't fighting no more. So it's all like a very tenuous agreement. That's why they have their own version of the Quiet Council, their own like little their ring. So what they did was when they terraformed the planet, they built essentially a hub of embassies, a hub of embassies for all of the houses of Iraqi.
I think
so. Now it's planet Iraqi.
It's like other species will, like other alien races will come.
Oh, that's for the port.
Right.
So,
yeah.
They've got, so they build the embassies, but then they also build the port because now they also built a separate sword station. So they have a sword station
cool.
too, and then essentially an intergalactic port. So, I mean, economically, they're setting themselves up to be the hub of either interdimensional travel and or goods and services.
They also have made this claim that they are the capital of the solar system.
Yeah,
which is like,
fuck it.
Where's that coming from? Like, that most people are on this other planet, and that's where like we just got here from another dimension, but we are on this other planet now, and we are the capital of the solar system.
Like every other land grab, you just claim it until someone tells you can't, and then you fight over it.
That could set up some conflict with the governments of the planet Earth.
Well, I mean, the governments of planet Earth, sure, but they can't do anything about it. It's more interesting to me of like the other civilizations, right? So what do the Kree think about that? What do the Skrull think about that? What do the
I think they're
Daxamite, or not Daxamites.
That's DC.
That's DC. What's the Jason? Doesn't matter. Spartans. All that stuff.
I would think maybe the other, like the superheroes of Earth would be like, well, exist in peace, but you are not the capital of the solar system. We are two different societies living here.
But who tells them no? No, nothing on Earth currently, including all of the heroes in the Marvel Universe, have the power to stop them.
Well, and I think also
really
the
might
X-Men
makes right?
I mean, I think the mutants are on board with, because I think Magneto was like, we need to claim Saul as ours, which also kind of, they are the future of the human race. It never made sense to me that the humans were like, oh, they're a different species. Like, they're obviously not a different species. They are like, we're all gonna get there. I mean, that would be awesome.
That's the whole conflict of othering, right?
Right.
Yeah, like you subjugate what you don't understand or that you are afraid of.
Indeed. Well, and also plus when they were introduced, it was not as though they were the future of the human race as much as just an offshoot.
I mean, it's Homo superior. It's in the name.
Right.
I think I'm whether you're reading X-Men or not, this is really fascinating issue, and it was a really fun read. I'm glad that I picked it up.
Yeah, I agree. I am glad that I picked it up as well.
So we took a planet-sized amount of time talking about that. So let's switch on to the next book, which I think both of us were most excited about this week, which is Supergirl, coming up tomorrow, #1, by DC Comics, written by Tom King with art by Bilquis Evely. Solicitations are as follows. Kara Zor-El has seen some epic adventures over the years, but finds her life without meaning or purpose. Here she is, a young woman who saw her planet destroyed and was sent to Earth to protect a baby cousin who ended up not needing her. What was it all for? Wherever she goes, people only see her through the lens of Superman's fame. Just when Supergirl thinks she had enough, everything changes. An alien girl seeks her out for a vicious mission. Her world has been destroyed, and the bad guys responsible are still out there. She wants revenge, and if Supergirl doesn't help her, she'll do it herself, whatever the cost. Now, a Kryptonian, a dog, and an angry, heartbroken child head out into space on a journey that will shake them to the very core. What did you think about this, Prime?
I liked it. Real quick about that solicit. If she doesn't want to be seen through the lens of Superman's fame, she does not have to wear her family crest to do her superhero stuff. Just have a different.
Let's talk about the story.
Anyway, I liked it. I like the superhero in the sword and sorcery kind of trope where they get, like, I never read it because it was before my time, but I was like references to the Sword of the Atom, where Ray Palmer, he finds this whole thing downstairs, down in the microverse, down there. Yeah.
And it's always down, so that's cool.
Right. I liked it. It was an interesting choice to make her definitively 21, which makes calling her Supergirl a little less reasonable. I get why, because it's one syllable and that's already what she's called. Let's see. It seems incredibly irresponsible of her to go to this barbarian world with her red sun in order to get a drink. Like, there's no other way for you to accomplish this. Some, I don't know, scientifically advanced planet with a red sun.
I loved that, actually.
Yeah.
So if she's constantly kind of, so the premise is that Supergirl is not the main character of this story, at least this issue. But the premise is that she kind of gets inserted into the story because on her 21st birthday, all she wanted to do was get a buzz on, and she can't do that unless she's depowered to some degree. So she goes to a planet with a red sun and gets drunk. So she has her first hangover, her first drink, and she's just kind of like, it's like the ennui of your late teens, early 20s. Like, what am I doing with my life? Which was pretty relatable. I thought it was kind of funny.
Sure.
And she's inserted into this kind of like young girl's mission. The book starts with this young girl witnessing her father get killed by another clan, another barbarian clan, and I wouldn't call these barbarians. It's more advanced than that. It's more just like rural, technology-free communities, right? So like farmers and warriors, but not
swords
caves.
And that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's more sword and sorcery than it is cavemen and rocks.
Do you know, barbarian is from the Greeks when they would talk about the people who weren't Greek. They were like, oh, they always talk like bar, 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 bar. And that's where the word barbarian comes from.
This is way more advanced than that. It's more sandals and swords and sandals epic, which is really interesting genre to kind of insert Supergirl into. So, I mean,
I also, the bit of like DC, just like DC minutia nitpicking, maybe an orange sun would have been better, right? Like, traditionally, they lose their powers completely when they're under a red sun, like pretty immediately, but she's like grabbing swords and stuff.
She's got so she's only been there a day. It's fudgy how much. So like every time that we usually see like a manufactured red sun and blah blah blah. So it's just like a ray or a beam or a concentrated. So she's been there a day. She's able to get a buzz on. And then when she's in action, she gets hit with an arrow or two. It breaks her skin, but doesn't really take her down.
Yeah.
And she's able to catch a sword, cuts her up, but she's able to.
But she stops it. Right.
Yeah. So I take it as like a diminishing returns.
You know what? You're right. So in the Silver Age, like many things, when he showed up on a sun, planet with a red sun, it was like boom, no powers. But there was that one of those future state books where he in the future goes down to Lexor and he's like, I've got a few minutes of power. So they have been doing,
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a sliding scale, and it was also very effective in the story because it's not sure. Because also isn't there kind of a thing too where she's either gonna be or is potentially more powerful than Cal?
They say that sometimes. They go, I think that's one of those comics things of one-upping, like, whoa, pick up this issue of Supergirl. It turns out and then Superman later is like, well, you're not more powerful. I just have more control. And then some other later writer is like, no, they are more powerful. So,
Either way, it's like this weird sliding scale where in the stakes of the story, we know she's under a red sun and has been for a little bit of time. She's vulnerable enough for her insides to get drunk. Cool for her insides to absorb alcohol, and then when she gets struck by an arrow, very shockingly, it's like, oh shit, is she gonna? Is this over? But then she kind of rallies, so it's more of a diminishing returns as it is a light switch,
which kind of makes more sense to us now. I think we have. I think it's a good thing. There's a little more science in our culture in some ways, and the idea also, of it like pushing out the red sun energy.
She was there for mostly nighttime because she was getting tipsy in the evening, and then was about to leave in the morning.
That's a good point. Anyway. But her costume not invulnerable anymore.
What did you think of the art, the story, the book?
Oh, the art was great. I really like this kind of art for sword and sorcery kind of story.
Yeah.
The design of the sword is cool, which as longtime listeners will know is something I appreciate. Very cool. I think all of the main characters that we see here will be in further issues. There's one that it was like, wait a second, did you just kill that? Did you just kill that character, Tom?
Yeah, there's
what you did just now, but I don't think so.
This is not Black Label. I don't know if this could be in continuity. I think it is. This is one of those I think it's only supposed to be 8 issues or 9 issues, but it's a limited series.
Yeah,
it's very explicitly kind of like on the side. So I really do think that this is going to be something that's in continuity, but will not touch anything else.
Yeah, like she'll have this adventure, she'll finish it, and she'll go back to Earth.
This is what happened on a 2-week vacation that she took, and that's it. But
now they do hint at her in the very beginning that she killed this guy, right?
Yeah.
But she goes out of her way to say, like, no, we don't do that kind of thing. So,
but that's the perspective of the young girl.
I hope that
no,
she maintains her.
That's the perspective of the young girl.
Yes, it is.
So our narrator is this young girl who wants revenge for her father. This book. The first 2 pages I was annoyed because this does that Tom King thing where he is an orator talking to you about the story as opposed to just telling you the story. He does this a lot. Where
with
it's just
silent panels that are
tons and tons of text boxes and silent panels telling you a story, and then a lot of times he'll juxtapose what's on the screen with what the narrator's saying, as if singing a beautiful song but showing something horrific.
Right. Yeah.
So he does that a lot. He did that a lot in Batman. He did that tons in Heroes in Crisis. So when I was reading the first 2 pages, I was just like, shit.
Yeah.
Is this going to be like? Are characters going to talk to each other? Is it just going to always be orated to me as opposed to experiencing the story? But then for this explicitly, it really worked because now we have an unreliable narrator because it's like an 8-year-old girl.
And you thought 8-year? I was thinking teen.
No.
Really?
She's prepubescent. She's 11 or 12 at the oldest.
Right.
At the absolute oldest. This is a little girl. So
she is unreliable, and she may be lying too. You know, for protect,
so
who knows? Yeah,
it added, as opposed to added a layer of separation, which sometimes it does. It keeps me at arm's length. It actually added a layer of intrigue instead. So I was like, oh, cool. This was great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next thing. And I think this is part of DC's new publishing strategy, where they have miniseries that are easily collectible into trades is probably part of it. But also, like, I'm all right with that. You know, you get like a Mr. Miracle miniseries or this kind of thing miniseries, and maybe more the like British model of TV, where we have this story and we'll tell it. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Also, the hook at the end. Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, I'm agreeing with you. It's like the Hellboy model. You know, like multiple miniseries that like connect to each other, but not really. You could always keep jumping on. But see, even that becomes unruly. So I don't know.
I think it's also more of a character thing. You know, they're like,
it's got positives and minuses.
Yeah, of course. But like, whereas they might not start a Mr. Miracle ongoing, we'll get a mini. And I mean, not that miniseries haven't been around before, but I think they're just a little more.
They're doing.
It looks like they're focusing a little more
exponentially more miniseries than they are ongoing series,
which I like a lot better than if they see which one works and they stick with miniseries over backups that are things that I'm not interesed in. I
want to get rid of the backups. I hate the backups. I'm glad that this was one issue. The
hook at the end too of this particular issue was like, oh, what an interesting way to set this story in motion. Why it continues past this first issue.
Think about it. That barbarian, that like warrior, grew up underneath the red sun. Get him somewhere else.
Could be,
and he could
never know.
Potentially a lot more fun.
That's true. There was an old DC annual, Legends of a Dead Earth. Do you remember that one in the 90s? Nope. It was cool. They all showed like so far in the future that the Earth had been long gone. And one of the other ones was like, I think Luthor had been in an AI, and he was identifying other planets that would be able to process yellow sun radiation like that, and if memory serves, destroying them. And then one of them was the one who survives, and he's like the Superman of that time. It was cool.
Yeah, this was cool. This is JD and I. It's not really a theory so much as like a proven rule now. Tom King is perfect in a sandbox. So when he's got a explicit amount of issues or a very structured story, it's like gold.
Yeah.
But when you give him just like a full run, there's going to be a lot of white noise.
What has that? I only know of Batman that he's been like the regular ongoing writer, or did whatever it was, detective.
I mean, it was mainly Batman.
Was it? Okay,
yeah. Like also too with Heroes in Crisis, because that like everything that is like in grander continuity or ongoing with no like leash. It's just you get extra issues of garbage or like diversions or let's drop a cliffhanger and let's not approach it for 6 months.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas when he's got a very explicit like 10 to 12 issues where he wants to tell a focused story, it's some of the best stuff. It's some of the absolute best stuff.
Yeah, Batman Catwoman is good.
Batman Catwoman's great. I know you're not liking Strange Adventures, or at least you weren't, but that is.
I would review the last one just to see how much I will dislike it. But
have you been up to date? Have you been reading it?
No, I dropped it a long time ago. And
man,
I just don't like what he is doing with the character.
I know,
you know
I know.
Yeah,
but it's the 10th issue kind of revealed his motivation if the things that are happening are true, and it's one of those moral quandaries where you're like, I mean,
sure.
I'd be interested to hear that too. Yeah.
Wait, you do?
Anyway,
yeah. Oh, and I'm sure. Yeah, sure. But once it all comes out, I'd be interested to hear what you think about the whole story. You know,
I don't mind dirtying up people or dirtying up characters as long as it's.
Right, people you do have a problem with.
Yeah, right. Story. If the story dictates that kind of change, and if the story dictates that kind of change, if it's fully examined, and if you understand why at the end of it, I'm cool with it. No, there's no one is sacred. I don't care.
There are good, times right? when sure. Yeah.
But if you just do it for shock value or a turn or a twist just to be edgy, then you're not a good storyteller. You're just trying to, get clicks. And that's when I agree with you. That's like, you're just dirtying this person up to dirtying. Like, it doesn't make sense.
And I think Tom King believes that he is writing good stories. I don't think he's doing it for shock value, but it's come to be for me with him specifically. It's like, this is like every time, man. This is like what you do every time. I mean, but
he didn't ruin Scott Free.
I didn't finish that one, and that was before I knew who he was, and I liked it, and I just didn't stick with it. I really enjoyed it though.
And the Vision was. You finished the Vision, right?
Yeah, we read it for the show.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
There was some like really fascinating reasons as to why things got out of hand.
Mm-hmm. There were.
So, like, it didn't bother me. I don't know.
Yeah, and there have been stories in the past where I like that. I think I'm just in a like milieu of my reading that I'm just not interested in that kind of thing right now.
It's because he's fucking with your DC, isn't it?
No, actually the one I was thinking of was Identity Crisis. Oh man, I thought it was so interesting when they did that back in the day, and now I look back and I'm like,
Heroes in Crisis, you mean?
No, I mean Identity Crisis from like way back in the day, where it turned out.
I mean, that has nothing to do with Tom King, but yeah, we're talking about it's just thematically.
Yeah. I mean, like that's what I mean is like there was a time when I thought that was very interesting, and just like at the moment right now, for I'm just like not interested in reading that kind of tale.
That's fair.
So yeah.
Well,
but this was really good.
Next book.
Yeah. What do we got?
Static, Season 1, Number 1 by DC Comics, written by Vita Ayala with art by Chris Cross. Bullied nerd Virgil Hawkins wasn't the kind of kid you'd normally find on the streets at a protest, but like everyone else in the city of Dakota, he was fed up. Unfortunately, the first time he stood up to raise his voice, the world turned upside down. The experimental tear gas released that day left some of his classmates maimed or dead, but it left Virgil and others with stunning new abilities. Virgil has power inside him now, real power, the ability to channel and manipulate electromagnetic fields. But there's anger burning inside him too. What is he supposed to do about all this? And, first and foremost, what is he supposed to do about his bullies now that they've got superpowers too? So, I want to caveat all of this with, I have never watched the show, the cartoon Static Shock. I have literally no relationship with this character other than being tangentially aware of it. And of Milestone, but no, I've never watched the cartoon.
That was a good cartoon.
I have no member berries associated with this type.
Yeah. Oh, and then that was one of the early ones where they started like the Justice League showed up in Static, and it was like, oh shit, like he showed up as an older guy. It was awesome.
Cool. That's right. I do remember that. I remember in Justice League Unlimited, there was like a feature
where you saw like the Batman Beyond era again in this older Static. Yeah. Oh, those were good. And then they had the same guy does Green Lantern. Was that
before we get into that?
Yes.
I have nothing to get into. I've never watched the show. I want to talk about
that's
the
comic.
That's
a good point. But real quick, Phil Lamar, who I'm a big fan of, like I like to follow his career. He does Static and Jon Stewart, and they sound like two different age people. But then Jon Stewart had to meet older Static, and he had already, I think, done a voice of older Static, and it was like, he was doing like kind of, I imagine it was a difficult thing to do, like to make Static sound maybe a little more grizzled or whatever. No, I just really quick wanted to address Todd Engle's comment about how Identity Crisis was totally misogynist with the female villain and woman in the fridge. I agree with that. I was disappointed by the ending. I thought it was going to be like a superhero murder mystery, and it turned out not to be that interesting. And when I look back, and this is why I wanted to bring it up, the Sue Dibney stuff, I didn't like it all, and was more upset that she was gone. And the stuff that they did with her in that story, I thought that's one of the reasons I look back and I'm like, that's not that great. The cool part was kind of treating it realistically, but even that,
Oh wait, I got the wrong.
No, that was it.
This is what Todd Engel said. I'd like to agree with dirtying up characters, but hated when
Bendis.
When the no.
I think it's supposed to be when Bendis did it to Wanda.
Oh, did it to Wanda.
Yeah.
Thought it was misogynist. Identity Crisis was totally misogynist with female villain and women in fridge. I don't know. I have to reread it. It's been a long time since I've reread Identity Crisis. It's out of print right now, but I have it. It was a murder mystery. Misogynist? How? Because the killer was a woman?
The part that I think of is more of just like, doing to this character what I thought was cool about it back then was that they were treating these characters in a realistic way, at a more serious tone. But also, Sue Dibney, was assaulted by Dr. Light. I think that's what Todd Engel is referencing.
But again, like I'm not exactly sure I understand. It's the characters. So for those of you who have never read it, Sue Dibney was sexually assaulted by a C-list villain, Dr. Light. There were a couple of other members of the Justice League who, to protect Sue and the integrity of the Justice League or something.
Yeah, because he knew their identities, and they lobotomized Dr. Light. Right.
Yeah, they lobotomized Dr. Light, but then they also made everyone forget. I think Zatanna was right.
They made Batman forget specifically.
Yeah, they made everyone forget that this happened.
Yeah,
and that event ended up being kind of the catalyst as to the murder that occurred and who killed her. And
see, that's what I thought was pretty cool about that story. Was like they did this thing, they lobotomized him, and then it turned. That
again. Still, how I'm not exactly sure how it's essentially misogynist. It's the characters make a misogynistic choice, but is the story misogynist? And also to that end, it was the real. You understood why they wanted to erase the memories, especially the identity part. He knew everybody's identities, and he was going after people's families and loved ones, and they refused to kill them. So erase the memories, but the real emotional fallout for the rest of the characters towards the end of the story was you hid it from your team members, which was wild. And yes, Sue is a woman in a refrigerator victim,
which as a pattern is an issue, is a problematic thing in like storytelling as a whole. I don't think any single thing is inherently like morally flawed, because after having identified that, we look back and they found that yes, a woman was the catalyst for this story.
Yes, it's a murder mystery, and she was who was murdered. Right. Yeah.
She was. Yeah. Because what's her name? Ray Palmer's ex-wife was trying to. Yeah. It was an accident, but she was trying to like scare them so that Ray would come and protect her.
So with fridging, this is like a really fine point. It's like a really fine point, and people might disagree with me. It's more along the lines of, so when you fridge a character, when you fridge a woman, it's overly misogynist when it's done to motivate your antagonist, your male antagonist, to go like seek revenge or seek justice. This was like a murder mystery case that mobilized the entire DC universe. So is it explicitly fridging for the purposes to one up your male character, or is it a tragedy? I don't know, to be honest with you. Okay, so that's
there
fair.
is that.
Todd Eagle says, secondly, Jean is a killer because she's a jealous woman. Very true.
To get a man is why this happened.
That I would consider more of a misogynistic plot point than the tragedy of Sue accidentally being murdered.
But anyway, Identity Crisis seemed interesting at the time. It is a comic from about 20 years ago that I haven't thought of in quite a while.
We should read it for the show, just because these are really interesting conversations to have with the audience. Because it's, on one hand, it is a seminal story that was very, very groundbreaking for its time. On the other hand, does it age well at all? Is it intensely problematic? But does that mean it still has its kind of status? Like, it'd be interesting to read like with a modern lens, because Brad Meltzer's no slouch. Like,
no, although
he's an excellent writer.
I haven't seen him recently.
Well,
in the world of comics, I should say.
Yeah, no,
Right,
he hasn't really written comics in a bit.
Yeah.
But anyway, Static Shock.
Static Shock.
All right, listen. I'm going to go through this very fast because,
Do it.
again, this was my first kind of, other than the milestone issue number 1, this is my first foray into him. It's a very clunky comic book. The first half is incredibly clunky. And when you don't know who these people are, that's a problem. However, from the dinner table scene on, the whole second half of the issue is fantastic. So
you have to look up the slang in the beginning. I did.
No, it was more like there's a shit ton of character and narrative shorthand. Which I get because this is a established character, and most people that are picking this up know who the hell he is and what he can do, and blah blah.
And he has recently been fairly heavily featured in Teen Titans and that kind of thing.
So they are very quickly plowing through some groundwork, but even so, it's done very clunkily to me. Like it was like vignettes of scenes, and you just fill in the gaps as opposed to paraphrasing it or condensing it for you very well. However, like I said, when you kind of get over that first 10 pages, the story really picks up and it's very entertaining. So I would say, like, if you know nothing about this character, this is still a good issue, but plow through that first chunk. Just get through it. What did you think?
I enjoyed it. So as we said, I did watch the show. I read some Milestone back in the day, like when they first came out, but that was in an era where I'd be real choosy about, what comics I could get, or if I even happened to see them on the shelf, or, I was like 9 or 10. So I have a little bit of knowledge from that, but most of it comes from the animated series. Some of this is definitely influenced by that. Just in case you're curious, his friends, I don't believe were in the original comic. The Richie, the guy with the blonde hair, and the girl that he's interested in, and their other friend, I think, are like the gang from the series, which is cool because that was a really cool show. So like I said, I did have to look up the slang. I mean, I got it from context clues, but that's always interesting. Learn something new. So yeah, I thought it was good. It's interesting. They seem to be going a route with him that his powers are a little bit of a problem. Like we had mentioned before, that he's, it's like a little uncomfortable sometimes to have these powers, and his dad has been training him. Oh, also his mom is alive, which was not the case in the show.
Look, you could stop with references to the show. I have absolutely no idea.
Well, I'm not just telling you.
No, I know. In general, like it shouldn't be a 1-for-1. It's more like, did this work without the knowledge, and does it work with the knowledge?
Well, no, it's just an interesting, like, that was a big part of his characterization in the show. His mom had died like years ago, and it was, a big part of who came up a lot in the show. And that is not the case. So much so that when the thing happens at the end, I was like, oh no, is this happening in the story, not years ago? But anyway, the issue with him. Yeah,
I will say, like, now I think they probably will kill his mom, and I wouldn't have thought that without you telling me.
Maybe not, though, because he might not have been in the original series.
They're going to kill a parent.
Could be the dad.
They're going to kill a parent now. Now I'm convinced it's going to probably happen, and it's going to be a twist. But
not for you,
man,
not anymore.
No, thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. I didn't think about that as a spoiler from another continuity.
It's all just fodder
of that show.
Yeah, it's all just fodder. Like they'll reuse all of this stuff. Yeah. They'll just kind of like take a small twist on it, like they did with every other thing.
Well, it's interesting too that his dad has been teaching him martial arts for a long time, and I think that there will be him trying to reconcile, or not reconcile, but him trying to use that kind of training and the meditative aspects of that training to handle his powers. The more problematic aspects of his powers, where buzzing his head.
That would be awesome. That would be very fascinating and awesome. Like I really like. And one of the things that I usually bristle at, whether it's in cartoons or TV and stuff, is when like that pilot episode or that first issue when someone is immediately a master of their new abilities.
Yeah.
So I really, really like the idea of this was put upon him. This is scary as shit. This is a tragedy. And the work necessary to kind of get a hold of it, let alone use it efficiently.
Yeah.
And that was also that's also like one of my favorite kind of tropes in X-Men comics. Like when a new mutant emerges, like that's a fucking terror. Like that is a scary ass thing. It's not just like
a beam shooting out of my eyes.
Yeah, like I can fly now. It's great. Like no, you're floating in the air with no ability to get down or know how to control it. Like that's a scary ass thing, and I like that this comic really like taps into that towards the middle section.
I thought it was interesting how they got their powers. That seems like a little too far, even for a crazy evil corporation. Like, oh, we'll just use this untested gas on these protesters. Like, they ran no tests, apparently. They just created this gas, and they're like, let's fire it at these people.
I mean, you gotta get those Antifa warriors.
Right. And so that's obviously why they did it. And I don't object to it. It's a little bit of a clunky mechanism adapting.
It's crazy on the nose, but it works.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to believe that even a police force or corporate complex as bad as what they will be talking about would use like gas that they weren't aware melts people's flesh off.
Yeah, that was a little real. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like they like to at least appear to be good, you know. The original there was this like gang thing, or the cartoon there was this like gang thing, and they were at Alpha Industries, and the gas exploded, and that's how they all got powers. And I could have done with that, like. They were stopping a protest and something happened.
I like the idea that I can't think of and this is probably my final thought on the issue. I can't think of where it's happened before because I know it's happened before, but I like the idea of this kind of selective process and then those that survived it, what they choose to do with it. So like this selective process of everyone's exposed to this nastiness, it kills some, it maims some, but then a small percentage, it, adjusts or readjusts your DNA for you to be able to do something or an ability.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the complete lottery or uncertainty of that. Whereas, I mean, of everyone that survived it and now has an ability, I'm sure a lot of them, if not most of them, don't have the moral fortitude or the life experiences of Virgil.
I think you're probably right about that.
Which is like a really fast, like it's potentially in the story, it's a very, very good kind of analogy or vector with which to talk about class inequality and luck and just kind of like one for one actual real life kind of inequality.
And Frida was even at the protest and was not exposed. Like another level of
like what makes her so there's a lot of really interesting interpersonal things that they've put on the stage that could be really, really cool to explore. I hope this comic does. I hope it's very different from the comic and from the cartoon in all of the obvious ways and feels modern in all of the good ways as opposed to just the slangy ways. This is cool.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what happens.
I bet you are.
Oh, I am.
For those of you, before we move away from this, for those of you that are interested in the Milestone universe, they are coming out with a compendium of all of the original series. So this big 1,300 page book of the first 12 issues of every single Milestone book. So it's like once 12 of Hardware, once 12 of Icon, 0 to 11 of Zombie.
Was there a 0 issue of Zombie?
Yeah, 0 to 11 of Static. And something else. Like it's a lot of comic if you were interested in like the original versions of these stories.
Cool.
Yeah. I think it's coming out in like October. But be sure to
Also-
let your retailer know.
Especially if that retailer is at 4327 Main Street, JD's Hero
Right.
Complex. Also, there was, on a sadder note, in the back, John Paul Leon passed away, and apparently he was the third. I didn't realize this was the third of the three creators who created Sonic, and unfortunately, the other two have passed away as well. So just to give some compassion to
and speaking of I mean, like to tie it back to Tom King a little bit too, like John Parleone's last known comic or last job is a Batman Catwoman one-shot holiday special that he did. Like it's going to be like it was supposed to be like an in-between issue between 1 and 6 and 7 and 12 of the Batman Catwoman book, but they've delayed it to December to actually come out in the holiday. So
that's cool.
It's unknown if he was able to finish it, if it's mostly him who's but yeah, his last printed kind of DC work is coming out later this year. But anyway, let's quickly talk about Venom number 200.
Okay.
And I say quickly because it's a massive book.
Was big. I was expecting it to be multiple stories, but it was not. It was all one story.
It's the finale of this run, so it's like one large story. People are banging on the door, but we're not open yet, so
let them bang
with that. So yeah, Venom number 200 by Marvel Comics, written by Donny Cates and Philip Kennedy Johnson. Philip Kennedy Johnson just co-wrote like 10 pages in the middle of this. It was, but 80 of the 90 pages is Donny Cates, with art by Ryan Stegman, Kev Walker, Chris Giarrusso, Ron Lim, Mark Bagley, and others. It's not really a jam issue because that kind of implies that a different artist every 2 or 3 pages. It's really kind of like 2 comic books chunked onto each other with a couple of like little fill-ins in between the 2 chunks. So Ryan Stegman is like the main artist that deals with the first story and the second story. So solicitations are as follows. This is it, Venomaniacs. The landmark 200th issue starring the most sinister symbiote in the Marvel Universe arrives. And after this, all caps, nothing will be the same. From Donny Cates, Ryan Stegman, and a who's who of artists from the issues that tore Eddie Brock's life asunder and brought the King in Black to Earth, comes the first chapter of the rest of Venom's life. But in Null's wake, what even remains of the Lethal Protector? So this book is an awesome ending to Donny Cates' run. If you have been reading it, you're going to read this and it's great. If you haven't been, this is kind of like to me, this is a really, really good kind of microcosm or example of how to end a run. You tie up a bunch of loose ends, but you leave 2 or 3 really interesting dangling things for another writer to jump on if they want to. So you got that sense of closure, but without it being an explicitly closed door, which I really, really like, especially when you're talking about perpetual second act comic books. At this point, I could walk away from Venom without feeling like I was cheated, or I could see if they do anything with Dylan Brock, or you've got this new status quo Eddie, and it's relatively fascinating. So like I think this just, before even talking about the content of the book, this is a really good example of how to end a run without screwing the next guy or cheating your audience. I thought this was pretty cool, just structurally.
Yeah.
As far as the story goes, I mean, it was rad. It's cool. At the end of King in Black, Eddie Brock became the de facto king of all symbiotes. So he essentially is the hub of this network of symbiotes where he sees all things and hears all things and experiences all things at all times when he's jacked in. The problem with that is that kind of network, that hive system, was meant for not humans.
Yeah,
so
I thought Null was just like a regular guy before he got the symbiote.
Well, he was a regular guy 500,000 years ago.
Before the symbiote network really grew.
Yeah,
and all that
so closer to like sentient beings with, to like closer in lineage to the Celestials. So no matter what,
right.
tons stronger and more capable, right?
Okay.
Whereas it's all been diluted, and now we're essentially just bacteria on the Earth. Okay? But
we're getting our powers back. All the powers are coming back.
but yeah, the idea that it's physically aging Eddie. So he's like old man Brock.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating, and he has to rely more physically on the symbiotes. And what's really cool too is he is the master of this hive mind, but the one symbiote that he can't control that has autonomy is his original one, and that's
because it was kicked out, right? That's why.
Yeah. So during King in Black, it was kicked out of the hive. So he's got this best friend co-parent.
Yeah.
That is a symbiote, which I thought was kind of funny. And it just sets up the new status quo.
Why did it turn Spider-Man bad? Like, did they must have addressed that, right? Donny Cates must have said like there was some reason. Because he seems like a pretty decent fellow, the symbiote now,
I mean, from what I remember, Donny Cates didn't have to do anything with that because it was that symbiote was cured during Bendis's run of Guardians of the Galaxy when Flash had it. So Flash had the symbiote and it was eating away at him. And what it does is it exacerbates your
like anxieties and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So he had a substance abuse problem and was suffering PTSD, and it just kind of like amplified that.
Gotcha.
But during the Guardians of the Galaxy run, they find the race of symbiotes and they cure it. They fix the symbiote, and he's able to do other things with it, like create armor and do all kinds of weird shit. But that symbiote eventually finds its way back to Brock. So it's they fall back into their codependent relationship, but it's not a overly destructive codependent relationship.
Right. They're just together.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I think that's
all right. Yeah.
But before I get into spoilers, what did you think of this book?
So I liked it. So I always thought Venom was cool, and on this 200th issue with 200 covers in the back, it feels appropriate to talk about. Like I remember, I think I had Venom number 1 was with the foil cover and whatever. He's one of the few at the time villains who's created well after his hero was created, and still manages to make it into like his top group of villains. Like Ra's al Ghul is one of the only other ones that I can think of. And yeah, I think he's really interesting. And so I saw this on the shelf and I was like, it'd be nice let's check in with Venom, see what's happening after so long, and there were elements of that I enjoyed too, where he's like shaking hands with Spider-Man and Steve Rogers, which is an interesting thing, having actually read some of his very early Lethal Protector, comics.
He has an open invite to join the Avengers.
Yeah.
Which he refuses. Which is really interesting.
Well, he's very busy, and he's old, and he's just a stay-at-home dad now.
He's got a daytime.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, one thing I thought. So they make a joke about using good and well, in different ways. And he's like, I'm a journalist. I know what it is. And on the preceding page have misused the word omnipotent to what they mean is omniscient. And and they say omnipotent twice. And then on the next page, make a joke about using the right word. He says omnipotent means I know everything. Audience, that is not so. Omniscient means that you know everything. Omnipotent means that you are all powerful. Which, if you like, you could make yourself know everything. If anybody ever asks you which one you want to be, use that information.
All right.
Yeah.
I think we just split a really fine hair when talking about a drooling symbiote monster.
Well, no, they're just two different words.
Oh no, I know. What I'm saying is like, okay.
Oh yeah, it's not part of the main plot. It's
that's what I mean. We split a fine hair.
Yeah. But he is now omnipresent. He clarifies to Peter Parker, right? Which means he's all over the universe. And he's like, well, that's not exactly true, but it's closer. And that also gives way to, like you hinted at, a cool story point, especially for a 200th issue wrap up of a run.
Yeah.
You get to see a lot of different things happening, like all around the universe. He's hanging out sitting on the Silver Surfer's board. He's helping fix some, distant planet because of Null's disaster. It's a shame that Null is gone now, because I've really come to enjoy mistakenly hearing Null when people say in Null's wake. But that won't happen anymore, unfortunately.
No, they've essentially, so the end of King in Black, you had the universe.
Captain Universe. The Enigma Force.
The Enigma Force essentially kind of imbue Venom to become like the hive mind, and it really is turning a page and turning him into a potentially cosmic character, which is really interesting. Like, it's an alien and then imbuing it with a cosmic force of some sorts and kind of like changing the status quo of it to be more of an omnipresent cosmic character.
Does he still have the Enigma Force?
No, but it was, what I'm saying is like, that's a turning point to kind of imbue him with the ability to become a more omnipresent cosmic character. And they essentially lay the groundwork for that in this book of I'm everywhere.
Which makes sense given his origin. He's always been a very street level character who is like bonded to an alien symbiote.
Yeah.
But,
It's weird, but it's just weird enough to be fascinating.
Yeah.
It depends on what they do with it. But what made me cheer, like a giddy schoolgirl in this book,
how does a giddy schoolgirl cheer? No.
Tee-hee-hee.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's very specific, and it's like tee-hee-hee.
Yeah, for sure.
So Donny Cates left a dangling plot thread like 7 or 8 issues ago, and probably more than that actually, of the Council of Reeds and of the Maker, who's the Ultimate Universe Reed that is bad and stuff. He's been in the background of this book, potentially even the big bad of this book, all the way up until like issue 25 or something, and then just dropped off because he was able to get back to the Ultimate Universe, which is in ruin. And then they haven't talked about it since. It's all been King in Black stuff and blah blah blah. But
it made sense not to. Like, you didn't realize it was a cliffhanger.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Those of us like me that's been reading the book the whole time, I've literally been waiting for like, when the fuck is other shoe gonna drop?
Yeah.
So the shoe drops in this book. You've got Eddie Brock talking to the Avengers, warning them of what he thinks is going to happen or what he thinks is coming, which was just like a really cool, like, guys, this is going to be an event in a year and a half.
That's when you mentioned things that future writers could pick up. That was what I thought of. You've got this evil Reed Richards who was able to get back to his universe, and I truly believe that he is essentially trying to get into the Council of Reeds, which is something. Oh man, I love that Council of Reeds too.
But and then they think of themselves as gods, so they don't really care so much about who gets hurt or who doesn't. It's all for a greater purpose. So in order for him to get into the council, he has to revive his universe, and because
they've all made their universes pretty good, and,
because he's a nasty fuck. Brock believes that he's going to try and do it by actually invading ours and reclaiming it, because our Reed refused admission to the Council of Reeds back in Hickman's run of Fantastic Four. So this is one of those like Donny Cates taking deep references, and like he did with the Necro Sword and all kinds of other stuff and Venom's origin, and just like reapplying it in fun ways.
See, and I wonder if that will be so fun. Yeah, definitely. I wonder, now that we're talking about it, is that a thing that a future writer of Venom could pick up, or a thing that Donny Cates intends to pick up in whatever he's writing next?
I think it's too juicy of a thing for Donny Cates not to pick up, because also too, there was a bunch of rumors about a year ago of him wanting to revive the Ultimate Universe, and this might just be his avenue in order to do it. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, because it could turn out in a different way. But the Council of Reeds. Now, I don't think they would have been cool with destroying a whole universe to get in, but
maybe not.
I just love that idea. Yeah.
If the Council of Reeds have simply asked him, like, we'll let you in if you revive your dying universe. It's up to the Maker to figure out how to do that, and because he's a garbage person, he's going to potentially come up with a garbage way to do it.
And the Council of Reeds, if it was done, might be like, no, that's a horrible thing to do. You can't join. Or so much
as, I mean, you did it.
You're smart. You're a smart Reed.
Yeah, because again, it's like they're driven. It was a conflict in Hickman's run. The fact that they were driven only by logic, and the most logical thing for them to do was to shed themselves of emotion and their families, and then they were able to actually fix things. So do they have?
Was not
So do they have like moral quandaries when it comes to destroying one to revive
an entire
another,
universe? Well, we'd have to wait and see, I suppose. Yeah.
Either way, it was really cool. And then, of course, now we have a new Venom. Dylan Rock is now piloting or being piloted.
And Flash Thompson is around with a distinctive look.
Yeah.
And
that was, you know what? That was the only part of the issue that was kind of like, all right. Like, I did not like the art and did not care about the conceit of it. Like,
I guess like now there's a bunch of different symbiotes that are still on Earth that have bonded with people, and I assume he will be protecting these bonded entities while the guardsmen try to hunt them down.
Of everything in this book, that was the only thing I didn't give a shit about.
Yeah. I guess Flash Thompson was already back, but I was like, oh, cool. Flash Thompson's back.
Yeah, they brought him back in Venom proper during the King in Black event, because when he died, a very large part of him, or his conscience was a part of the codex.
He came back as like a white symbiote dragon.
Yeah, so he was able to break out of the hive as by infecting one of the dragons.
Right.
And then it was a whole thing of being able to really just reconstitute yourself because you're already now in the physical plane.
Yeah.
Very stupid comic book logic, but it was also,
I like the man in the van kind of role for Eddie Brock. It seems like he is still mentally in connection with Venom and now Dylan. But they make a good point. The symbiote is not Venom. Venom is the combination of them. And, Dylan wants to hear his name, and he's like, I can't. It's an emotional impulse.
Oh, that's a good one.
That was cool.
That was a good moment, too. This was a really fun book. When this run is fully collected, it's going to be really great on a shelf. This is a good 35 issues of this character that beforehand I did not give two shits about.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, excellent. Zach Hilton asks, who's excited for Al Ewing's cosmic take on Venom? Looks like the market will be the main protagonist. That's probably not the case, but I assume it's a typo. Ewing did some great work with him when he was writing New Avengers and U.S. Avengers. Was that like where they had each state had their own Avengers? I like Al Ewing. I can't think of anything in particular that he's written that I like, but I have the idea that I like him.
Guardians. He was really good. Like Guardians, Immortal Hulk.
I haven't been reading that, but I love the Hulk, and I probably should have been reading it.
Which is super interesting because essentially these two creators are switching off. So like Donny Cates is taking over Hulk after Ewing leaves, and Ewing is taking over Venom, but with Ram V as a co-writer.
He is all over the place these days.
To answer Zach's question, I'm not overly excited about it because I don't like the preview art so far. It's Brian Hitch, and I really don't like it. The look
you like Brian Hitch?
Not lately.
All right.
I really liked the Ultimates, but I didn't like his. Let's just go with no. I've not been drawn to it in the last decade.
All right, fair enough.
At all. But also too, I don't know. Like, it's gonna be a cosmic book. We'll wait and see. I'm very comfortable dipping out at issue 200, and I'll just wait and see. Yeah. But Al Ewing has proved me wrong, so we'll see.
That's true. You didn't think Immortal Hulk was going to be as good as it is.
And no, I didn't. So we got a couple more books on the docket, but I got to open the store. And unless you're going to vamp alone, if I've got people here,
I can do that for a minute. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
So let's very, very quickly. Let's remind everybody.
Oh yes.
If you want to contribute to the show, or if you like what we're doing here, patreon.com/JohnnyDestructo. Any and every donation is totally helpful. It helps keep the show and the lights on with servers and equipment and etc. accoutrement, whatever.
Indeed.
Any donation is great. And you know what, though? If you can't, that's totally fine, because you can help us support us by going to youtube.com/cultpopgo, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Let us know that you like what we're doing if you do enjoy what we're doing. Or you know what, even if you don't, like and subscribe anyway. You know, it doesn't hurt you. It helps us. And facebook.com/cultpoppodcasts. Just give us a shout out. Say hello. Also, too, if you want to be featured on the show in any way, shape, or form, be sure to remember to email us or comment or ask us questions or join the conversation. You could also just join us live every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and join the conversation in real time, which a lot of people are doing, and we will feature them on the screen of the show.
Yeah.
So, let's talk very quickly about the next 2 books. We're going to skip Thunder Rounds, but when it comes to Thunder Rounds, all I could say is, hey, everybody, go read Radiant Black, period. So, very, very quickly, let's talk about Seven Swords, number 1, by Evan Daughtry and Ricardo Matina. So, solicitations are as follows. This is by Aftershock Comics. A weary and jaded D'Artagnan is drawn into a final conflict with the wicked Cardinal Richelieu. Richelieu? Yeah.
Richelieu, yeah.
Whose ruthless quest for power has led him to the supernatural. But the last musketeer can't defend these infernal enemies alone. To save the world, he'll need to join forces with 7 iconic swashbuckling heroes. Don Juan, Captain Blood, Cyrano de Bergerac, to name a few. 7 swords who must overcome their host of differences and work together if they have any hope of thwarting Richelieu's diabolical plans. So, I love the conceit of this book. I think it's like a funny swashbuckling Avengers in a way with intellectual property that's
like a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah. Super cool idea. In execution, art's beautiful. Story sucks.
Yeah.
I hated it. I like
I was upset at the first 5 pages having been wasted. I was like, you made me read that whole thing and it was some bullshit test by the Cardinal or whatever.
There are like
what is this?
Even the characterization is decent. The stakes that are set up is decent. It's very much a team coming together kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it is so haphazard, and there are so many beats that are missed. Like, it's like, so I did some after I read the book and felt like very off about it because it's so weird. You've got all these great pieces of potential, but the way that they're put together just doesn't really work for me.
I also didn't know that it was the Musketeer. Like, I didn't read that solicit. I breezed past the thing.
They called him D'Artagnan. And
I mean, they do.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, you see the famous picture of all of them, and I was like, oh, how about that? The Musketeers. And then it felt like I had absolutely no idea what was happening. This is like some sort of sequel to kind of what was in the Musketeers. Although I think there already was a later sequel, so it might be following on the heels of that. But yeah, the introductions of all the characters was like, well, who's this?
Yeah, it just kept telling me like, I'm going to Spain, I'm going to France, I'm going to Rome, I'm going to Spain, I'm going back to France, I'm going okay. I looked it up, and the writer is actually a screenwriter who's done a bunch of things, and then it made sense. Like, this reads like a screenplay where like they're like a filmmaker is going to add in establishing shots and add in scene setting before we get into the scene, whereas in comic book form it's just jumping from piece to piece without giving me any kind of context or grounding, and it's just such a shattershot read. I was very
and that opening like 5 pages, if it happened before the credits of a movie, kind of would be fine. But here, so D'Artagnan's in this church. He's giving a confession. I don't know he's D'Artagnan at this point. So I'm like, who's this guy stabbing some priest in the eye? And then all of the other monks attack. And you're like, oh, is this some kind of violent order? These are the bad guys, or are they? Yeah. I don't know, because I don't know who this character is. And then it turns out that, oh no, then we take a quick aside so that somebody can ask to have something removed from their face, which I am now piecing together as Cyrano de Bergerac, who famously has a very long nose. But they don't get into that at all. And then it's just 1 page in the middle of this fight scene with D'Artagnan fighting these monks. he gets up to the top where he thinks Richelieu is, and it turns out it's his old captain of the Musketeers who has released a bunch of prisoners for him to kill.
Keep talking.
Okay. He's released a bunch of prisoners for D'Artagnan to kill to prove that he can do it. And, afterwards I was like, was that there just to have some kind of action in a story which is mostly not action? And then he winds up he's fighting this woman who, I don't know, she might be the only original character. She might be a pre-existing character. I don't know. Who is like the right-hand person of this, the modern right-hand person of the captain of the Musketeers, and she is, also part of the test. And there's this sword that might be demonic in nature that's certainly hinted at the end, but whether it is or not, I don't know.
This was but
yeah.
I've said before, I've mentioned before in conversation, it's almost more upsetting when something is mediocre than when it's just bad.
Yeah.
When it's just bad, you could see all the seams and the places that it's missed. Because this is so aggressively mediocre, it almost like kicks my ire up a little bit more because there's so much good stuff in here, and I can't say enough how good this art is. This is like only a notch or two under Dan Mora. The action, the pacing, the panel layout, the art is so good that it even makes me more upset that the story itself is just mediocre.
Yeah. I have really no interest in reading more of this.
No. And also too, like we very often don't pick books to poop on them.
No.
But this was such a fascinating example of I
also thought
8 of the 9 yards.
Like the title, 7 Swords, which they make sure to put in quotes in the which is not, the guy who wrote the comic probably did not write that copy for the upcoming issue. But, they're referring to these people who wield swords well as swords. And that's fine. But I saw the book and I'm like, oh, what's this story about 7 swords? That sounds interesting. Are they mystical swords? What's the deal? Except for one of them, no. just metaphor. Or synecdoche, actually.
I have to go.
Okay, fair enough.
So I'm gonna go on mute. You're gonna close the show, and then we'll talk.
And I can't actually end the show.
So you're gonna close the show, so start talking.
Okay. All right. While Noel is gone, I am going to give you a quick rundown. I thought Berserker was very good. I read 2 and 3 at the same time. Well, not at the same time. 1 right after the other. 3 was after 2. And, it's a well-drawn, executed art. And I like stories about things that happened in ancient times. And if they stretch into modern times, that's interesting too. We get a little more backstory about who this guy is and what his deal is, this Berserker. And it has been optioned for a Netflix thing, so I'm interested in that as well. It's a good story. It's getting like it. I wonder how deep it will get, but it could get pretty deep. And they explore the possibility that aliens are responsible, that were thought of as gods to the ancient people of 80,000 years ago. So I'm curious to see how we'll go. Anyway, thanks for joining us. I am me. Thanks for staying with me to the end of the show. We'll be around next Tuesday. Now, they do a book club, a movie club on Tuesday, which you should look into if you're interested in that kind of thing. It's happening over Zoom, 8 o'clock Tuesday nights. Go on JD's Hero Complex Book Club to find that out. We'll be here probably next Sunday at 10:30 a.m. We're talking about doing an evening show. At some point, as we have done a couple of times in the past, we had so much fun doing it. We wanted to do it more times because we enjoy doing things that we find fun. So stay tuned for exactly when that will be. We'll be having some drinks and talking about some comic-related things, maybe involving the time of year that it is, maybe not. Anyway, Find me at brianleibdesign.com. Email me at brianleibdesign@gmail.com. And here's Noel again. Wonderful.
Thank you for joining us. Come back next week. Join us. Just like go on the social medias and stuff. But we'll see you guys later. Thank you. Bye.